G'day and welcome to another recipe creation video. Today's recipe is an American Stout. I've had an American Stout on my to brew list and most people will vouch that I've been talking about it for a long time, but it's finally time. I've got a nice batch of fresh 2020 Columbus and Chinook whole hops, so I'm going to try and incorporate at least one of those into the recipe. The first thing to do when thinking about brewing any recipe is look at some reference. I usually start with the BJCP, and it's a good place to start if you're thinking about entering this recipe in a competition at any time. Once I've looked at that, I'll often go and look at several books or magazines or websites and just have a look and pick which ones I like the look of. And then I make up my own recipe from that. Anyway, let's stop talking about it and do it. Let's just jump straight to it. BJCP American Stout. Good to have a quick read through. Make this a bit bigger. Let's zoom in. American Stout. Fairly strong, highly roasted, bitter, hoppy, dark stout. Has the body and dark flavours typical of stouts with a more aggressive American hop character and bitterness. Sounds perfect for me. Generally a jet black colour. Some may appear very dark brown. Persistent head of light tan to light brown colour, usually opaque. Aroma, moderate, strong aroma of roasted malts, often having a roasted coffee or dark chocolate quality. Burnt or caramel or charcoal aromas are acceptable at low levels. Medium to low hop aroma, often with a citrusy or resiny character. Medium to no esters, light alcohol-derived aromatics are also optional. And the flavours around the same thing. Nice roasty dark flavours with some hop flavour there. Here we go. High to low hop flavour. That's a big range for the hop flavour, where the aroma was medium to very low hop aroma. I guess that could come with some aging too. Might drop off where the flavour might stay a little longer. Full body, medium to full body mouthfeel. Breweries express individuality through varying the roasted malt profile, malt sweetness and flavour, the amount of finishing hop used. Generally has a bolder roasted malt flavours and hopping than other traditional stouts, except imperial stouts. Here's what we really should be looking at. A common American base malts and yeast, varied use of dark and roasted malts as well as caramel type malts, adjuncts, such as oatmeal may be present in low quantities. American hop varieties. Like a hoppy, bitter, strongly roasted extra or export stout. Much more roast and body than a black IPA. Bigger, stronger versions belong in the Russian Imperial Stout style. Stronger and more assertive, particularly in the dark malt grain additions and hop character than an American porter. There's our stats. 35. The IBUs can be anywhere from 35 to 75. Your colours 30 to 40, and your OG is 50 to 75, FG 10 to 22. So it's quite a wide ranging finishing, and even the whole lot except for the colour. The colours are probably the thinnest range. Alcohol 5 to 7%. Now sometimes I go to the BJCP wiki. And they give a little bit more detail on the malts used and the percentages, but because American Stout's sort of a version, of another stout, they don't really have. I couldn't find anything there, so we're not looking there today. Unfortunately, the BJCP has given us the guidelines, but they haven't really given us any ingredients except for American hops. The next point of call, I will have a look at Brewing Classic Styles. This really is a great book. Yeah, it's quite a few years old now, and some of the newer styles might not be in there, but it's a classic book. You might pick it up originally and be disappointed that it's sort of written for extract, but below the extract recipe they have the all grain recipe, so it really is for everybody. I will be doing book review videos very shortly. This will obviously be one of them. They do have an American Stout in here. I won't go through the description again, of course. But they are using black roasted barley at 7.5%, chocolate malt 5.6%, and Crystal 40 at 5.6%. And the rest American two-row. They're mashing at 68, and they're suggesting using California ale yeast 1056 or US-05. Bittering hops Horizon and flavour hops Centennial. They have flavour hops, but still it's only 1 ounce or 28 grams at 5 minutes of Centennial they're using in this. And they're bittering to 67 IBUs with Horizon at 60. So I've just started a notepad on the side of the screen there just to list the ingredients that people are using so I can reference that when I start making my recipe. Now sometimes I'll look through other books. I happened to notice there was one in this book from Brew Your Own, Big Book of Clone Recipes. And there's a Rogue Ale, a Shakespeare Stout, which is an American stout from Rogue Ales. But it is a bit of a pain that they don't have the percentages. Percentages is the most important thing in the recipe rather than amounts. I know amounts might be easier for beginners, but the quicker you get your head around using percentages instead, it's much easier, and it's much easier to adjust for your own system. But here they use 4 kilo of Great Western Pale Malt, 600 grams of flaked oats, 600 grams, or a little bit more of 600 grams of Breeze chocolate malt. They use some Crystal 120 and some black barley. So it's about the same, about 600 grams or 1.3, 1.4 pound of flaked oats, chocolate malt, crystal malt. As far as hops go, they bitter with Cascade. They use 55 grams, which is 2 ounces, and they flavour with Cascade as well. They use just over an ounce or 32 grams at the 15-minute mark. They choose a different yeast. They use Rogue Pac-Man, which is Y yeast 1764, or Lallemand Nottingham Ale yeast. They mash at 64C, which is, some people might think is low for a stout, but with all those, they use a lot of like oats, crystal, and chocolate malt. So they don't need for the yeast to leave sweetness and to bring the final gravity up a little bit. They've got a lot of different malts in there that will do that for them. Sometimes I'll look at this. This is a magazine you get when you sign up to the American Home Brew Association. It comes out every 2 months or so. And they have these national home brew competition ones where they will publish, they'll have their national home brew competition and they'll publish the winning entry for each category usually. And you can go through and you can look. There'll possibly be an American stout in here. I'm not going to look at it today, but that is one of the places I'll often look. I am a member, so I will have a quick search of their website sometimes. But I don't tend to go to forums because they're just sort of random recipes. I like to get to look at published recipes, trusted sites. And I know that's funny because I run forums and things too, but that's just the way I like to do it. Unless you've had, you know, a recipe that someone you know has brewed a few times or that's got a really lot of credit, then you might have a look at that as well. I have a lot of brewing books. I'll show you one day a lot of brewing books. And one I happen to have is this one called Brewing Porters and Stouts. And I noticed this had, of course, an American stout recipe. It has several. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in it. But I'm just going to look at one just to keep it a little, you know, so we don't have to go through them all. And they have one called 3-Pointer Stout, American Stout. And this one's listed as a extract partial mash, but that doesn't matter. They use Mutton's amber malt syrup at 52.6%. For the partial mash, they use US 2-row pale ale malt, which is listed at 20% of the total. Crisp brown malt at 10%, crisp amber malt at 5%, UK crystal malt 120 at 10%. For bittering, they use Magnum pellets at 60, which is an ounce. They use Cascade pellets, 1 ounce at 10 minutes, and they use Citra, half an ounce at 0 at flame out. This one got my eye, but I'm not going to use Cascade pellets, but I think I'll throw in like Columbus maybe, and use Citra at the end. They use Y Yeast 272 American Ale 2 yeast, or White Labs 008 East Coast Ale. They're running at 5.5%, which sounds good to me, and IBUs are 52. Or they don't see, a lot of these books and magazines won't include the very late editions, like the flame outs and things. But they say it's 52 IBUs, 70 with the contribution from the late editions. The SRM of 71. They mash at about 67 degrees. So I've added the crisp brown malt, the crisp amber, the crystal 120 just onto my list, and their hop schedule there. Magnum, the Cascade, and the Citra. And if you don't have the extensive library of books like I do, I wouldn't expect anybody to have as many as I do. I have a lot. You can search their websites. For instance, the American Home Brew Association has their recipes up there. If you don't remember the name of the magazine, which is quite hard sometimes when you don't know it, Home Brewers Association recipes will get you to the same spot. Now in here, we can just write American Stout, of course. Some will be locked, you'll need to be a member, but some won't be. There's a Belgian Dip Chocolate Stout, that sounds lovely, doesn't it? And it's the same with the other magazine I collect, the BYO magazine. So they've tightened up their recipes a little bit. I pay for the magazine, but I can't look at their online resources for the magazine these days, which is a bit weird. But they still have free recipes in their database you can look for. And they have hints and tips and all that sort of stuff. It's a really good resource. I've searched for American Stout, and you can see here, there's 379 results. Some are members only. There's their BYO's 10th anniversary Imperial American Stout, and there's a free one here. There's a whole article about American Stout that's free, and a lot of information you can go through about it, with a couple of recipes at the end. There's that Rogue's Shakespeare Stout clone. I think that's the one we checked out before, out of my book, because they wrote my book. There's a Deschutes, sorry if I said that wrong, Obsidian Stout clone as well. All sorts of things. Now we have a list of ingredients and how the experts have done it and how the style should be. But most programs, when we're going to look at Brewfather now, will have the style set out for you. So you don't really have to look, but it is handy to look at the BJCP just to remind yourself, and sometimes you get some really good information that the programs like Brewfather, they don't have the space for to tell you. So we're in Brewfather now. I will move these notes off. You don't need to see the notes. I'll move those off to the side. I'll expand the window and let's make a new recipe. This video is not about profile creation. I've already done videos about that. Click new recipe. Now, one question I get asked a lot is how I get my screen looking different from everybody else's, how I get these bars up here on the right, how I get them across the whole screen so you can really see what you're doing. And first I'll go to full screen, which is usually F11 on a PC, and then I zoom in, which is Control and plus, or the addition symbol. And that way, see, straight away, bang, all the information's up there, big enough for me to read in my old eyes, and I can see things clearly. If you keep going big enough, I think this side bar goes away too. Sometimes it does. Oh, there you go, like that. If you want to get rid of the sidebar, there might be another setting for that. I don't know, but I'm going to go out a little bit further, and that should be enough. Hopefully, you can see that. I've got my profile loaded in. We'll try and select the style. American Stout. And this here shows you where you want to get your levels, between 5 and 7%, and all the details are there, which we've talked about before. Now, some of those recipes I might have mentioned, they might have been 7.2% or something, and you can push the boundaries a little bit, even for competition, but you don't want to push them too much. If it stands out too much, then they'll probably pick you, and I don't think you should be trying to cheat, but there's nothing wrong with pushing the boundaries here and there. And if it accidentally comes out at 7.2% or something like that, that's fine. But it's a good idea to try and keep it within the guidelines. So I'll start by adding my main ingredient. Look, I don't have American two-row here. What I do have, and what will fit the style very nicely, I know, is Maris Otter. And I have Simpson's Pale Ale Finest Maris Otter. Now, I'll just guess at the start. I'm going to guess around 5 kilograms. We'll save that. Now that gets us to about 4.7% already. And looking through my list, the most common thing I've seen in all of them is a Crystal 120 or a Crystal 40. I know I have Simpson's Crystal in the garage. I have Simpson's Crystal Medium. Now that's a little bit lighter. 120L that a lot of those recipes used is about 318 EBC. This is about 170, 180. But that's what I have, and there's no problem with using this. Most of the recipes used 600 grams or about 5%, something like that. I'll try throwing in 500 grams worth, and we'll just see how that is at the end. We can always adjust it. Now we'll add some chocolate malt. I know I have some Thomas Fawcett chocolate malt, so we'll use a bit of that. And I'll start with 300 grams, not 300 kilograms. That would be a bit too much. 0.3 kilograms or 300 grams. We're getting closer. Now you can see that our alcohol is over the minimum anyway. It's 5.4 at the moment. Our original gravity's up there already. Our final gravity's up there already. We just still need it a little bit darker. And we haven't put our hops in for our IBUs yet. Now I might add some flaked oats. They're very popular in beers these days. And mine are just flaked oats from the supermarket. I'll just choose oats flaked. And I'll probably add half a kilo of that. Now, I don't want mine up to 7%. I'm going to try and keep mine down around the 5, below 6. I want mine around the 5.5%. So I'm just going to knock down some of the Maris Otter. We'll just go to 4. I think I'll be going to put it up a little bit, but we'll see how we go. I still might have to add acidulated malt for my pH. So I've got to leave a little bit of room for that. And I also know I have some brown malt in the garage. So I might chuck a bit of brown in since someone used that in theirs. The one I have is Simpson's Brown. Got that from Grain and Grape. And I might add 500 grams of that. Okay, now we've basically got our grain bill sorted out. Of course we can change it along the way. Let's go into the water and just see where our pH is sitting to see if I have to add acidulated malt or anything like that to change the pH. So let's go into the water calculator. We'll come down. There's my source water, West Melbourne water. I'm not using RO water for this recipe because I know I'll have to add things, I think, rather than take them away. Well, that's my guess at the moment. Let's just try the American Stout style profile. They have it in here. There's American Stout. We'll choose that. We'll hit auto. And bang, our pH is looking okay. It could be a bit higher. For a stout, I would rather it in the higher end. 5.4, up the top there, just for a better, I think it's better for a stout. And that's where you've seen me in other videos with lagers take it lower. But 5.23, that is okay. So I think we'll use that. Save adjustments to recipe. There's our additions for the mash. We didn't add any to the sparge. Do we not have the sparge turned on? Let's just go back and have a look. Is the sparge turned off? No, it was turned off. when you do make these mistakes, I found, so even if you press reset there, I'm not sure how you do it, but all these salts are still in my list. There's probably an easier way. Or maybe you hit that update, do you? I'm not sure, but I'm just going to delete them. Someone will tell me below. So we're back into the water. I've made sure my sparge is turned on. I'll reset everything just to make sure everything's reset. We're still at our target profile. We'll press auto. There's our water pH at 5.2. We'll just leave it at that today. We won't mess around too much with the mash pH. As I said, it could be a little bit higher. But I know personally that my pH is a little bit higher than what it ever says in Brewfather. So I'm quite happy to go in there with that 5.2. Now we'll save adjustments to recipe. And even though these say sparge, I add them to the boil. And you can go in and change them over. You don't need to watch me do all this. But I can change, instead of sparge, over to boil. Now if you don't do water adjustments, don't worry about it. Just go for it. I'm sure you'll be fine. The pH was pretty close to 5, or just over 5, so I'm sure it'll work out without any water adjustments at all. There's something I forgot to do. Give the beer a name. We'll just go Bandits American Stout. I throw Bandits in front of it because my house is known as the Booze Bandits HQ. It has been for over a decade now, maybe 2. And when I haven't got a name for a beer, I just throw Bandits in front of whatever style it is. And it just lets me know and lets other people know where the recipe came from. Okay, so we have our malt, we have our water, our mash should be sorted out. Let's get into the hops. Now I've got Warrior in the fridge. I usually have Magnum as my bittering hop, but I had to buy some Warrior lately because that's all there was. Normally I'd adjust the alpha. I don't have the alpha in front of me right now. But we'll go for a guess of 20 grams. Or maybe do an ounce to keep everyone happy. That's got our IBUs up there at 43 already. Now when I go back and look at my notes, some of these, that was 67 IBUs. That was the first one we looked at 60. They had 2 ounces of Cascade. Cascade's much lower alpha acid. They had 2 ounces there, and they had an ounce of Magnum. Magnum and Warrior are very similar. They had an ounce at 60. We'll go back to my recipe, and I'm pretty sure, even though I'm not 100%, I'm pretty sure most of the time when I get Warrior, it's around 12% rather than 15%. But we can always adjust this later. That made a big difference to the IBUs, but that's okay, because what we're going to do is add a flavour hop. So we'll just leave that there for now. And our flavour hop, I'm going to use my Columbus, if I can spell it right. Now the trouble is here, my Columbus is only 8. So I'm going to probably have to use a lot. Now again, I might start with 50 grams for my flavour hop. And I might go... see, I like to give my hops and my beer a bit of a stand at the end, say 10 minutes. So my flavour hops can go in at 5 minutes. And by the time of that, I turn the boil off at 0 and wait 10 minutes. My flavour hops have been in there in that hop wort for 15 minutes. So we'll go 8% I've changed and we'll put it in for 5 minutes. That's got the IBUs up there, right smack in the middle. That sounds good to me. And I'm going to follow that other recipe that had the Citra and the flame out. And I'll add, they don't seem to add too much here. So I'm not making, I've got to remember I'm not making an IPA. I know the flavour from my Columbus will be much more, I think from a flower, it's much more subdued and delicate than I would have got if I had thrown pellet hops in there for that Columbus. So if you were using pellet hops for that Columbus, you might drop it down a little bit. And I'll just add, they seem to make this last edition very small. Most of the recipes I've been looking at are 5 gallons, and this is a 6 gallon, so I'm going to add 20 grams of Citra at the end. And that will be a 10-minute hop or aroma stand. And mine's hot. You can always do, you know, the trendy thing of dropping it to ATC if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that. There we have a nice bitterness of around 60 IBUs. So we're looking okay. I'm thinking the bitterness from the Tomahawk's very gentle because it's a flower hop. It's just a lot more gentle than pellets. It's not as harsh. I like a bit of beer. I could push this Warrior up a touch. I can see you can see that at the top. So it says 34.2. Say I wanted to add another 5 IBUs. I can push this up and it lists the IBU at the top there. If I wanted to go that to 40 IBUs, I could go to 33 grams, something like that. 32 grams. That just pushes it up there a little bit. I like a nice bit of beer. So we're all in the range. Everything's looking good. Yeast, let's add a yeast. Most we've looked at used US-05 or equivalent, you know, 001 or just a Pac-Man American ale yeast. I think I'll keep this pretty straightforward. I have US-05 in the fridge or Nottingham. I'd use Nottingham or US-05. I think I'll use 2 packs for this. US-05 or Nottingham. Now that shouldn't have changed things too much. I've lowered our FG down. To be honest, I don't think we're going to have a problem with the FG. I think this is, we haven't changed the mash temperature yet. Maybe that will change things. But I think to get to 1010 with these ingredients, it's just not going to happen. I'm not sure why it's suggesting we might get that low. The mash temperatures, you know, I might raise it a little bit. Let's change the mash. We'll keep the high fermented. I should have edit, not change. I might go 66. I'll go 67. My mash time really is longer. You don't really need long for a stout, and for bigger beers you're trying to keep body in, you might go short. But I'm just going to be honest, and most of my mashes go for 75 minutes. And I'm going to add a mash out. I'll just put in 10 minutes for the step and 10 minutes for the ramp time. And that should do for the mash. Single infusion with a mash out. For the ferment profile, 20 degrees probably isn't bad for US-05 in a stout. I might go 19 just to, and I'll go pressurized because I will do it under pressure. That's not going to matter for anybody, but I'll just record it anyway and I'll write 10 PSI. Now I will change the days. I'll probably stay at 19 for like 6 days. It might take a little bit longer to ferment. And then I'll add another step and we'll say, well, we start at 19. Well, we'll go to 21 and I reckon another 4 days and she'll probably be done. This is always changeable, you know. You just follow the ferment and see how it goes. So I think we're looking pretty good. The only thing I'd like is the pH a little bit higher, but I'm just going to leave it at 5.2 because I know that I come out a little bit higher. So that looks about it. That looks good to me. We've got our water sorted out. Again, not essential, but it's good if you can. So that's about it. Okay, I can't upload this recipe yet because you need to put a picture of the finished beer. I was supposed to. I mean, I could put a cartoon one until I do brew it. Or you can just share it. I might just share it. I'll put a link for sharing. And if that doesn't work, let me know. and I'll get this copy of this recipe to you. I'll be brewing this shortly in the next week or two, and we'll see how it goes. Now, I just want to mention again, reference. Please use reference. It's really, really important. Even the best brewers in the world, if they're brewing something, you know, they haven't brewed 100 times, they will go and look at other people's recipes. It's not copying. It's not cheating. It's called reference. And all the best. Michelangelo used reference when he painted whatever he painted. It's a true story. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope someone learnt something from this. And we'll put out a few more of these. I think maybe every recipe I do from now, I might do an intro video like this. It'll probably be a little bit shorter, but I'll show you how I come about the recipe I'm using. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you to my patrons, because without them, I wouldn't be able to do this anymore. Stay safe. Cheers.